Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to all our participants, dignitaries, and our highly esteemed guest speaker and acclaimed Australian cricketing legend, Mr. Steve Waugh, to the online In Conversation with Steve Waugh on his book, Spirit of Cricket India, organized by the IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry. All participants will be muted to avoid any disturbances during the course of the session. To consume less bandwidth and have clarity, you are requested to stop video streaming at your end. Kindly post all your relevant queries in the chat section so that the same can be addressed during the Q&A session. So, as we start with, we will be playing a recording of the welcome address by Mr. Rajiv Poddar, President, IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry, who had to regret in the last minute as he had to attend an urgently scheduled Finance Ministry meeting. So, can we play the welcome address by Mr. Poddar?
Good morning, everyone. A cricket legend, an Australian living treasure, Australian of the year 2004, ICC's Cricket Hall of Fame inductee. I can go on and on. Most importantly, a true friend and a noble soul. IMC heartily welcomes Steve Waugh. Thank you, mate, for being with us today. I vividly remember meeting Steve in Sydney 15 years ago. He spoke little but left a lasting impression with his captivating smile. The story in the cricket field was the same. He spoke little and let his bat do the talking. That is what makes him a true legend. His book, The Spirit of Cricket India, is a beautiful photo essay of passion, craze, and love for cricket in India. We are not surprised, Steve, you chose India. It's not only because cricket is worshipped as a sport in India, but also because of your love for India. Eden Gardens has been one of his favorite grounds. The Steve Waugh Foundation has been supporting Udyan Rehabilitation Home for children suffering from leprosy in India. He and Lynette continue the noble work of supporting young people who suffer from chronic rare illnesses. Before I request Mr. Pranav Gandhi to take over, I would like to say a few words about IMC. The IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry has a rich legacy of 113 years of existence. It was founded on September 7, 1907 by a few Indian merchants who came together to establish a Swadeshi institution to fight for the rights of the Swadeshi businesses. In recognition of the Chamber's contribution to nation building, Mahatma Gandhi accepted honorary membership of the Chamber in 1931, the only chamber to have this distinction. The Chamber has since evolved into an institution continuing on the proud legacy of over a century in the service of nation building and simultaneously fulfilling its responsibilities towards the welfare and well-being of the society. IMC has state-of-the-art library which is equipped with the rarest books, manuscripts and latest books. Your book will adorn a pride of place on its shelf. I am extremely sorry I am not able to physically join today's event due to the meeting called by our Honorable Finance Minister for pre-budget discussions. However, in spirit, I am always there. The first thing I plan to do post the same is to watch the recording of this interesting session we are all waiting for. Once again, I welcome you all to this interesting event and thank you very much, Steve, for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, without much ado, I hand it over to Mr. Pranav Gandhi, co-chair the IMC Sports, Media and Entertainment Committee, to take us through this much awaited and interesting interaction with none other than Mr. Steve Waugh, the cricketing legend. Over to you, Mr. Gandhi.
Thank you, Selby. Cricket in India has been defined as a religion. The very essence of sport is said to be running through the veins of 1 billion people. Yet no one had really managed to capture the true spirit of what the sport means in India. They say a picture speaks 1,000 words, and Steve Waugh's photo essay is a defining representation of what this sport means to Indians and really how much it is a part of our everyday lives. Welcome, Steve. It is a pleasure to have you with us. So I'm going to get started right away. It's a very unique book for not just cricket, but all of sports, and an interesting title, Spirit of Cricket India. What inspired you to write this book and how did it all come together?
Yeah, look, firstly, thank you for having me, and to Rajiv, my good friend, thank you for making this session available and giving your time. Yeah, look, it really started back in 1986. The idea for this book when I first landed in India as a 21-year-old on that famous Thai Test tour, and I was sort of really taken aback by how different India was to Australia. The sights, the sounds, the smells, the total bombardment of your senses, and just seeing people playing cricket everywhere in the alleyways, in the streets, in the parks, on the beaches. There always seemed to be someone having a game of cricket, and I'd always taken a camera with me on these tours. So I took a number of shots from the front seat of the bus, which I always used to sit on the team bus up the front and have a look and see what's going on outside. But I could never really get out on the playing fields and take the shots, because when you're an international cricketer in India, your fame is such that you haven't got much breathing space. You tend to hop off the bus and there's 100 people around you. So I couldn't take any of these photos. So I always wanted to one day come back to India and to try and capture what is the spirit of cricket, why is it a religion to people in India. And I had the opportunity through the support of Canon, who I've been an ambassador for a number of years. They funded the project and the idea was off, and we said, let's go to India for 17 days and capture as much as I can through the lens of the camera and try and really work out why cricket is so important to the people of India.
Great, fantastic. The title is very interesting, Spirit of Cricket. So how do you define the spirit of cricket? Because there are so many definitions, and in context of this book, how do you define that?
Yeah, it's really hard to actually define it. When I was trying to come up with what does cricket mean in India, it came to me really easy. I think I said, attitude, energy, enthusiasm, and imagination. That's all you need besides the bat and the ball. And to me, that's what India is all about. A lot of people haven't got much in regard to wealth or material possessions, but if you can somehow find a ball from somewhere or a cricket bat, then you can have a game. You can make the stumps up with bricks or pieces of stone and rocks, or fence palings or backpacks, or if you've got a bit of chalk, you can draw the stumps on a wall, and all of a sudden you've got a game of cricket going. And it doesn't matter what size or shape or what background you're from. Everyone is equal when you have a bat and a ball in your hand, and you're a chance of being successful, your chance of playing in a team. And to me, the people of India seem to be united in this sport, and they get behind the national team. Probably you could forget about the last 2 hours in Australia, unfortunately. I don't know what happened. But generally, there's heroes, Virat Kohli, Sachin Tendulkar, Kapil Dev, Sunil Gavaskar, all these icons of the game. And to me, they're heroes to the people of India. So to me, the spirit of cricket is about having a go, playing with your mates, and just enjoying being out in the fresh air and be happy and healthy.
Fantastic. You had, and the book is just fantastic. You had a great deal of experiences traveling all over the country. You played a blind cricket match. You witnessed a match with monks. You visited an equipment factory in Meerut. And so fantastic experience. If you could say there was one experience or a couple of experiences, if you could share some anecdotes of that really stood out to you, or individuals that stood out to you during this process.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, I was there 17 days and I took probably 1,000 photos a day. So I got home, there was 17,000 photos to go through. And boy, that was tough to do because all had it brought back these amazing memories. That's the great thing about photographs; it takes you back to a different time and a place and memories and stories. But yeah, that trip there were so many. I mean, watching the physically challenged cricketers was something really awe-inspiring. These cricketers that either had some of them had missing limbs, others had sort of polio or other things that made it tough for them to play cricket, but they're just energy and enthusiasm, and they're flying through the air like ninja warriors. They were landing on bamboo crutches and bowling the ball, and I was totally in awe of what they were doing. The Blind Cricket Academy, having a game of blind cricket and playing very badly myself. I just realised how tough that sport was and how dedicated they were, and the passion they have. And they're not playing it for money; they're playing it for the pure love of the game. I enjoyed going to the Women's Cricket Academy in Dharamshala. It was really eye-opening to see the skill level of the girls and how keen they were to learn. Every time I said something, you could see them just soaking up the knowledge and taking it in. From there to meeting, celebrating the 100th birthday of Vasant Raj in Mumbai, who's since sadly passed away. But having Sachin Tendulkar turn up to that birthday party was a real highlight. Catching up with Rahul Dravid, then of course meeting a 3-year-old boy on Instagram who's got this incredible talent. So there was moment after moment, playing cricket in the Dharavi slum was the passion and the spirit of the people there. Cricket in Rajasthan, playing a game of cricket with the monks in front of the Himalayan mountains. I mean, that's something I never thought I'd do. And there were literally cows in the outfield. So that was, there was so many great experiences. It's hard to sort of say one or two.
Okay. The title of the book, Spirit of Cricket, is India. Is this a series of books that you want to do? Because I understood from what you said why you chose India to start off with. But there, countries like the West Indies, England. I mean, what are your thoughts on the next one?
Look, I'd love to. It's obviously a big project, a lot of planning, and it's you need a lot of financial support to make it happen, because this is not an easy project to do. And then the post, when you're taking the photos, there's a lot of work afterwards. And I've self-published this time as well, so it makes it twice as difficult. But I love the project, and I think every country has its own spirit of cricket. India is very unique, and then Australia, I'd love to go to Australia and capture cricket in the outback. People playing, in the country fields, in different landscapes, different climates, different situations. So I'd like to do Australia, and I think I'd love to do the West Indies and maybe England. So there's a number of projects down the track, but they take a lot of planning and a lot of work. But I'd love to do it again, because it was such great fun, and not only capturing, the cricket and seeing that, but testing myself out now as a photographer. I wanted to learn on this how to be a good photographer. And I took a guy called Trent Park with me, who was an ex-cricket player, but now is the only Australian ever to be invited to the Magnum Photo Agency in France. And he's like a test cricketer of photographers. And he was coaching me, and I was basically the rookie on tour. So I listened to everything he said and tried to take it all in. And the 17,000 shots I took were all taken on the manual setting on the camera, which is something I wanted to do, because I wanted to understand how light works, and what aperture means, and what shutter speed means, and what ISO means. And I think I'm starting to understand those concepts, but it was a real challenge for me as well to do that.
Great. Just going back to the book specifically, you featured two international cricketers from India in the book, Sachin Tendulkar and Rahul Dravid. What is it about these two players that led them to being featured, more than anyone else?
Oh, look, I would have loved to have had some other cricketers involved, but the book was more about grassroots and people involved in cricket. But I thought I couldn't have the spirit of cricket India without someone like Sachin Tendulkar, who literally is a god. And we talk about cricket being a religion in India. Well, Sachin's sort of the god, so I had to have him. And I've got to know him a bit more since I've retired from cricket. I get on really well with him. He's a nice, humble man who respects people. And for him to turn up at my request to a birthday party for someone that he had met before, I thought was really generous of his time. And that really made Vasant's 100th birthday, sharing it with Sachin Tendulkar. And this was a man that had seen India's first test match played in 1933, and also was still alive 86 years later when India won in Australia for the first time. So for him to turn up there was great. And Rahul Dravid's a cricketer I respect enormously. I've had a lot of time for Rahul in my whole career. I sort of mentored him a bit towards the start, and he went on to become a legend of the game. And again, very humble. He's aware of his place in history, but he doesn't see himself as more important than anyone else. And I really think that's a really admirable trait to have. So I wanted to capture a picture of him. And there's one in the book, but there's also a few others I took, and I took it in front of a brick wall because he was known to us as the wall. We could never get him out, and was like bowling to a brick wall. So it was great to have those two guys involved.
Fantastic. So I'm just going to move on a little bit to a more of a, before we go on to the Q&A, I want to move on to a little bit of a rapid fire questioning, which is obviously a popular format. So I'm going to start off with, which city captures the spirit of cricket in India more than any other few?
Oh, boy, that's a tough question. I think everything is different. I mean, look at Rajasthan. I went out to the desert. I'd say Rajasthan because I took this incredible picture of the kids playing cricket in the desert with camels in the background. And that, to me, if you show that picture to someone, they say India straight away. So I think that picture and also in front of the Taj Mahal. But let's go with Rajasthan.
Okay. The second question I had is, if you could have one Indian player as a part of your team, who would it be?
The current team or?
Of any era, or someone you played against?
Boy, that's tough. Well, I think when I played against India in 2001, it was probably the best batting lineup in the history of Indian cricket. Some incredible players. Dravid, Laxman, Tendulkar, Ganguly, and I've probably missed a couple of other great players. So who would I have in the team? Look, you can't really go past Sachin. And probably before that, Kapil Dev, when I first played against India, was an incredible player. So those two probably stand out. And I never played against Dhoni, but I think Dhoni would have been a great player to have on your team.
Got it. What is your most memorable cricketing moment in India?
I think it was winning the 1987 World Cup at Eden Gardens in front of 100,000 people. We were we went into that tournament as ranked underdogs. We'd beaten Pakistan in the semi-final, and England, the team we're playing in the final, had beaten India in the other semi-final. So all of a sudden we turn up at Eden Gardens, 100,000 people, and they're all cheering for Australia. So that was that was an amazing moment for us, and it was really the turning point in Australian cricket. We hadn't won much in the previous couple of years, so I think the 87 World Cup final at Eden Gardens.
Okay, great. And next question. I know you've done both as a player and as a captain, but which has meant more, winning the World Cup or winning the Ashes?
Well, I think probably the World Cups only come every 4 years, a bit like the Olympics the Olympics for cricket, really. Having said that, if we lose the Ashes in Australia, it's like you got India losing to Pakistan, I suppose, and the people are going, "Why did you lose? What happened?" We want to win that series. So the Ashes is still very important to all Australians, and when they lose, there's like a national inquiry, and there's committees set up to find out why we lost to England. So the Ashes are still really important. I think if you ask any player what they want, which matches they want to play in, they would probably say the Ashes first.
Okay, wow. The bowler who troubled you the most during your career?
Well, Curtly Ambrose certainly did in Australia. I did well against him in West Indies, but I think Ambrose definitely did. Trying to think who else there was. I felt uncomfortable against Devon Malcolm for some reason. He was quick and awkward. I didn't know where the ball was going, and neither did he. He got me out a few times. I found he very tough to face against. Wasim Akram was a great bowler. Murali, Harbhajan had a great record against Australia. So many fantastic bowlers, but I think if I had to pick one, probably Ambrose was the one that tested you out in every facet of your game.
Great. In your opinion, the best batsman in all formats in the game today?
I think it would be hard to get past Virat Kohli. I mean, I think he averages 50 in all formats and just continues to excel under pressure. And his ability to chase runs in the second innings of one-day games is something that he set the bar that I don't know whether anyone's ever going to reach or aspire to. He's been outstanding. So I think in all formats, he's probably the best player in all three formats.
Got it. In your career, the biggest chatterbox, banter-filled character that you played against?
Well, I think you'd probably be more interested in the Indian players who talk a bit.
Sure.
And I'd be no surprise that Harbhajan will be top of that list. He definitely liked to chat out in the field. Other countries, New Zealand always had a bit to say out in the field, surprisingly. England never said too much. The West Indies very rarely talked on the field. It was with their fast bowlers, just let the ball do the talking. Yeah, Pakistan, Wasim and Waka had a bit to say out in the middle. And I think Arjuna Ranatunga, he liked to sort of engage against Australia. He liked a bit of a chat. But look, I think Harbhajan would be probably up close to the top
Right
of the
up
list.
there. All right. And finally, I think something that everyone would like to know, what did you really say to Herschel Gibbs in the 1999 World Cup?
Oh, look, I think I pretty much said what was, it's got almost gone down in folklore. It maybe wasn't exactly those words, but it was along the lines of, you've cost your team the match or you've cost your team the World Cup. I can't remember exactly. I was caught up in the moment, but, I feel a little bit sorry for him now that, he dropped that catch. And he was one of the great fielders when I played against him. For him, that was just a momentary lapse of concentration that was obviously very costly for South Africa. And it's something they didn't recover from for a long time.
Well, we'll just stick to the folklore because why let truth get in the way of a great story?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so before we open up to Q&A from the participants, I just want to remind everyone that, if you are a cricket fan, this book is a must-have. Currently, I think IMC has about 30 books that are being offered at a special price of 8,000. The retail price is 15,200. And post those 30, I think that you can get, a copy for 11,000. Again, that's, the retail price is 15,200. And these books come with an official letter signed by Steve. So if you are interested in purchasing, and I strongly recommend you buy a copy, you can contact Chitra Kamath at the IMC. I'm going to kick off the Q&A and we'll take more questions from the participants. But to kick off the Q&A with the current series, excluding this morning's disaster session, what is your view on the series and how do you think it's going to go?
Well, I mean, up until this morning, I think India were sort of in control of this test match. And, I woke up this morning thinking if India play aggressively for 2 sessions, have a lead of 200 and then get bowling under lights against Australia, they were probably favourites to win the game. That, I think, should have been the game plan, but they came out very tentatively this morning and nicked everything and had one of those days where it just all fell apart. And I think for India, it's going to be tough to come back from that because obviously Kohli is not there for the last 3 tests. This was a really crucial test match for India, and I've got to say they'll probably fear for India's chances in the remaining 3 tests. After what happened today, it's going to be hard to recover. But having said that, I think someone like Rishabh Pant, I think should have played in the first test anyway because the guy's a match winner. He wins your test matches with his bat. I think he'll have to come back into the team. And India are quite capable of beating anyone. So I hope they come back strongly after today. I assume they're on the way to losing this test match. I haven't seen what's happened in the last half an hour, but it'll be a big blow to their confidence. Rahane will have a lot of responsibility, but I think he's a very good player and potentially a very good leader. He'll do a good job. So India won't be let down by the captaincy or leadership. He'll step up to the plate. But Australia, with their confidence high and with Dave Warner coming back, I think Australia will win the series now. But today was really totally unexpected. One of India's lowest scores ever, and no one saw that coming.
Yep. Okay, so just if anyone wants to ask any questions, you can post them in the chat. I'm going to start off with a question from Mr. Ashish Ved. Do you feel some good test cricketers should not play the shorter version of 2020 and vice versa?
Well, no, I believe that professional cricketers these days can handle swapping from one format to the other. The best players seem to be able to move between 2020, one day and test cricket without a problem. I think it's just it's up to concentration, skill level, practice, preparation. All the really good players can do that. I guess mentally, it's whether they can handle the workload and the pressures of the media and the press. Sometimes they do need a break away from the game, and Australia's done that pretty well. Pat Cummins was rested in the last couple of one days, and people criticised that, but you saw what he did in the first test match. So it's about managing your players well and understanding your players and getting to know them. Some players like to play every game, like a Glenn McGrath would want to play every game, where other bowlers might want to have a rest. So you've got to know your players. And there probably are some players that might benefit from not playing all formats of the game. But I know Jinky Rahane pretty well, and I know he wants to play more one-day cricket. So I think the really good players want to test themselves out in all 3 formats.
Got it. Questions from Shehnaz Mehta. Would you ever consider coming to India to coach our team if offered the job, or get more active in coaching in any which way?
Look, I really enjoy mentoring. I've done it a bit with the Australian side, and I also did that with the Australian Olympic team in Beijing and London. And I guess I'm time poor at the moment. I've got other projects, and I'm very passionate about things like this photography project and some business things, and my charity keeps me busy. So it's hard to fit everything in. I never say never, but coaching is something that takes a huge commitment. You're pretty much away the whole year, and I did that for 20 years. So for me, I find that maybe that's difficult at the moment, but I would never not consider it. Coaching India, I don't think they need me to coach India. They're going pretty well, and Ravi Shastri is doing a good job. There might be a few questions asked after today, but I guess any team can have a bad day. But I haven't really been asked too much to coach IPL or anything like that, but I'd always consider it.
Okay, fantastic. Another question from Rohan is, there's a fear that the game has become too batsman friendly. What is your take on that?
Well, you'd have to ask the players in Adelaide about that today. You're all 36. I think it's too friendly in 2020 cricket, definitely. The grounds are so small these days, and the bats are so good. I mean, the technology into the bats, miss hits are going 10 rows back into the stands, where I don't want to compare eras too much, but I remember in my era, you had to hit the ball as well as you could possibly hit it to hit a six. These days, top edges are flying for sixes, and the pitches are good for batting, and the boundaries are very, very small in 2020 cricket. So it's definitely skewed in favour of batsmen in the shorter forms of the game. Test cricket, I'd like to think that bowlers are in the game more, and maybe it's the day-night test matches are a bit of a payback for the bowlers, that things are in their favour a bit more, which is not a bad thing.
Okay. From Sharan Mangrulkar, is there a difference that you see in technique between the current players and the previous era in Test cricket? And what would be your advice to youngsters in terms of technique and changing styles in this era of T20 cricket?
Yeah, I think a lot of the current players get their front leg out to the leg side and open themselves up and swing freely, almost as if they're playing like a game of baseball sometimes. So it's called, freeing the arms and hitting through the line. And I think the footwork's probably not maybe as precise as it used to be. A lot of players aren't taking a big step forward. And a perfect example in the Indian side from the first test was Prithvi Shaw, who his front foot just wasn't going anywhere. And so there probably is a lack of footwork, and a lot of players are pushing away from their body a bit. And again, in India today, 5 catches caught by the keeper, a lot of footwork was sort of lacking in that situation. So I think for any young players coming up, it's, I was taught to play in the V between mid-off and mid-on when you first start your innings. Get used to the pace of the pitch, and then when you assess the conditions, then you can play the horizontal shots like the cut and the pull shot. So it's about taking your time and not being rushed. And I think really good players do that, like Jeff Matthews, Smith and Kohli. They'll assess the conditions before they play the big shots.
Great. Another question from Aditya is, and some of these were sent in earlier, is if you could say, maybe name 2 or 3 players of the next generation who you feel are going to become the next Kohlis and Smiths and Kane Williamsons.
Oh, that's a hard call. Look, I think in Australia, I can only really speak for Australia, but Cameron Green is making his debut. Looks, he's a real talent, and we haven't had a cricketer like him for a long, long time who can bat and bowl equally good. I think he'd probably be selected for Western Australia as a batsman and as a bowler at 21 years of age. So he's exciting. Will Pekoski, if he can get his situation under control, where he's had a lot of concussions, and that's a bit of a worry, but he's got a really good technique and looks a really good player. I think Babar Azam for Pakistan looks a fantastic player. I think Hardik Pandya, really, from India's point of view, is someone that I think could develop into a really top-class test batsman and an all-rounder. I think he's got more potential as a bat than maybe he realises. And I see him as a bit like a Dave Warner type, that he's seen as a one-day player, but then you saw what Warner's done with Test cricket with a bit of discipline and patience. So I think Pandya is a guy that probably is better than he thinks he is.
Right. What is your take on the impact of 2020 on Test cricket? This is from Vivek Bade. What is your impact on the take on the impact of 2020s on Test cricket? I mean, and specifically looking at India's collapse this morning.
Well, I think, with 2020, it affects your preparation going into a tour. Like everyone was in Dubai before this test series, and if you don't know your game well, or you don't know how to prepare on a regular basis, some of those players probably come to Australia not with enough preparation and maybe enough thought going into the test matches. So it does affect your preparation if you're not experienced, because you haven't got many lead-up games, and they're going straight from 2020 razzmatazz in Dubai to a test series in Australia. That's a big ask. So you've got to know your game really well. But the problem is these days it's not going to change. So you've got to get used to that fact. And I think you got to clear your head mentally and then prepare in a different way. Start thinking differently. How am I going to play in test matches? Where am I going to bowl? What shots am I going to play early on in my innings? So it's about preparing better, not so much in the net, but in your head mentally. How are you going to prepare?
Okay, I think Mr. Ajit Mungralkar would like to say something.
Good afternoon, Steve. This is Ajit Mangrulkar, former Australia. How are you?
How you going? Good to see you again.
Yes, in fact, now I'm with the Chamber. I'm the Director General here. And so we follow each other, I think.
How's that voice, man?
Yeah, last we met was, I think, in Bangalore about 2014, if you remember.
Yeah.
So great to have you with us. And I've got my senior team members here with me. I've got Sanjay Mehta, Deputy Director General, and Sheetal Kalro. So what you see is we are in the library of the Chamber. So, that's the place where your book is going to be. And look forward to continuing this association and taking this forward. Great to hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, look, I hope you enjoy the book. And people have said to me, it's not so much about a spirit of cricket, it's more the spirit of India, because there's quite a few shots of portraits of people in markets and various places throughout India. So I tried to capture the spirit of the people, not just the spirit of cricket. So I hope that the people of India enjoy it and appreciate it. I'm really proud of the end product. I think I surprised myself with the quality of the photos, but India is a great place to take photos because there's so much going on and so much to see. So there's great opportunities as a photographer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the questions from Priyanka Nair. What's your take on the next generation of Aussie Test batsmen? They seem to struggle to find a replacement when Warner and Smith were away. So is cricket still the go-to sport for kids growing up in Australia?
Yeah, it is in a way. I mean, in Australia, we play so many different sports that I think that's a challenge. There's when you're talented at one sport in Australia, you're talented normally at 3 or 4 sports, and people are always trying to grab the best players. But there's no doubt people still want to play cricket for Australia and earn that baggy green, and there's a lot of young talent coming through. But yeah, at the moment the openers in this Test match was Joe Burns a bit out of form. Matthew Wade, a makeshift opener, but we have a lot of people potentially that could do the job. Obviously, you got Warner and Pekoski, and then you got someone like Usman Khawaja and Sean Marsh and Marcus Harris. So we still have enough depth. There's enough players coming through, but I think sometimes you're sport when you see players like Warner and Smith, and you think the next player is going to be just as good. I mean, those guys only come around maybe once in a generation, so you've got to develop the other players and give them time to make it.
Great. A question from Mohak. What was your first impression of India, and did you take to it instantly, or did the feeling grow?
I was shocked the first time I went to India in '86. I didn't know what was going on because I'd come from where I grew up in the western suburbs of Sydney, and Australia, population of 15 million. All of a sudden, you land in India. There's a population of 1 billion. And it was just chaos everywhere. I mean, I landed in Bombay back in those days, and the first thing that struck me was that the place smelled different to Australia. Every country has a unique smell. Got on the team bus traveling to the Taj Hotel in Bombay, and no cars were staying in their lanes. They were all over the place. Traffic lights meant nothing, and the red light didn't mean anything to anyone. Pedestrian crossings, no one slowed down. So I'm thinking, this is a bit strange. And then I looked out the window, and there was just people everywhere. And then there was cats and dogs and animals roaming around, and people playing cricket everywhere. It was just so much. It was chaotic, and I knew I loved the fact that it was interesting and there was so much going on. I couldn't take my eyes off it. But at the same time, on that first tour, we played in a lot of rural areas, and the hotels probably weren't what we used to, and everybody got really sick. I mean, I was sick for 12 months after my first tour to India. So I had a few doubts, but each time I went back, it sort of, you fall more and more in love with the place. And, you know, I always find it fascinating. I love going back to India, and now my stomach is used to it. I don't get sick anymore, so that's not a problem. But I guess it's like Indian players when they come to Australia, it's just a different diet and different food. It takes a while to adjust. But yeah, India is a place that has definitely grown on me. The first time I was a bit conflicted. I saw things that I'd never seen before, and I didn't quite understand it. That the more you go back, the more you understand.
Okay. What is your favorite playing ground? This is a question from Kirti Arora. What is your favorite playing ground in India and why?
I think if you play well, they're always your favourite grounds. But I think Eden Gardens has special memories for me. I love playing there when there's a big crowd, like the '87 World Cup. I can never forget that. The 2001 Test match was an incredible Test match, even though we came out the wrong side of it. The Laxman and Dravid partnership was amazing. I scored a century. So that has really fun memories. The ground I would have loved to have played was Dharamshala, which I was lucky enough to go to with his book, but that's probably the most picturesque ground in world cricket.
Okay, a question from Ayaz Vasi. Moving slightly away from cricket in particular, he would like to know your view on the importance of sports people speaking their mind actively with regards to issues on social awareness, especially given that today with technology and information, their voice can be heard by so many.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Sometimes it's a bit challenging for players because they're sort of told what to do and what not to say and what to say, and they feel as if they've towed the line. I think it's a lot easier when you're retired and you haven't got all these restrictions, but it is important for players to have a voice, particularly Indian cricketers who are very popular and have the ability to make change. You know, if Sachin says something or Virat Kohli, then you can make a huge difference and you have a big impact in a short space of time. So they have a huge responsibility, those guys. And yeah, I'd like to see them use their power to do good. They certainly have that potential, and that's I think it's a great honour and a privilege to have that. So if you have that, then you should use it to make a positive difference. So yeah, I'd like to see that happen for sure.
Okay. A question from Karam that was sent in earlier is, who were your sporting heroes when you grew up, cricket and non-cricket?
Look, I loved all sports. I love watching the Olympics. So, Carl Lewis, when he was winning those gold medals, was pretty spectacular. Tennis, I love tennis. So, it was the era of Bjorn Borg and John McEnroe and those guys. I love watching them. Soccer, it was Pele and Maradona were my favourites. And then cricket, I suppose the West Indies were the juggernaut in the 70s and 80s. Viv Richards and his team, Malcolm Marshall, those guys. And then in Australia, probably Doug Walters growing up was one of my sporting heroes. So I really enjoyed watching all sorts of sports and still do now. I mean, you watch top class sport with the best athletes. To me is really enjoyable and exciting to watch.
Sure. Ajit, you wanted to add something?
No, nothing from my end, Pranav.
Okay. Another question which has come from Siddharth, this was sent in earlier as well. The 200 in Jamaica or the 120 in the Super Sixes matches against South Africa?
Good question. I like both those innings, obviously. Probably 200 against the West Indies and Jamaica is the most satisfying innings of my career because, they'd been unbeaten for 15 years. We hadn't unbeaten them for 22 years. It was 1-1 going to the last Test match. So you're playing against the best opposition in the most challenging circumstances where it means the most. And to score runs in that situation is what you practice for, what you make all the, it's what you dedicate yourself to. It's the sacrifices you made all become worthwhile when you score runs in the toughest situation against the best bowlers. And that was, everything was on the line. We'd beaten them for the first time in 22 years, ended their unbeaten run for 15 years in Test cricket. So for me, that's probably the most significant Test match innings I played. And the 120 and that against South Africa was probably the most important one-day innings I played. So I'd probably put the 200 at the top of the list.
Great. Another question actually that I had is from the 1999 semi-final. did you think you had lost the match till that incredible run out?
Many times I thought we lost the match. It was one of the great matches of all time. It just was seesawing the whole way. I mean, we had a bit of a batting collapse early on. Then Michael Bevan and myself put a partnership. We somehow made our way to 213, which wasn't a great score. And then they got off to a flying start. I think it was none for 40, and thought we're in trouble here. And then Shane came on and bowled a great spell, and we all banded together. And then we looked like we were going to win. Then we missed a couple of catches and missed a run out, and they looked like they're going to win. And then neither side really knew how to win in the last 2 overs. Many people say South Africa choked under pressure. We certainly choked under pressure as well, but they choked at precisely the wrong time with that run out at the end. So one of the great games. And to be fair to South Africa, they didn't lose the game; they tied the game. So it was probably both sides cracked under pressure.
Fantastic. The other question was, you mentioned that you were from N. Murli. Steve, you mentioned that you enjoyed the blast of colors and flavors in India. What kind of India food do you enjoy the most?
Well, it's funny because in Australia, I love eating fish and steak and chicken, but in India, I'm quite happy. I could be a vegetarian. I think the flavors are so amazing in India. I think my favorite vegetable is okra. I love okra. We don't get that a lot in Australia, so I think it's bindi in Hindu, but okra is one of my favorite vegetables. So look, I like all sorts of foods, but India, there's amazing flavors and spices, and I think the vegetarian food in India is quite amazing.
Okay. Moving back to cricket, another question for Mohak is, did you have a favorite batting partner who you enjoyed batting with? You obviously had great partnerships with your brother in the West Indies as well, but did you have a favorite?
Look, I really enjoyed batting with Dean Jones because, he was aggressive, a good runner between the wickets. So I enjoyed running with him because we were both pretty quick, and he was positive. He wanted to take the opposition on. So I always enjoyed batting with Dean Jones. Ian Healy, I had a lot of good partnerships with. We've seen they coordinate things well. Mark and myself had some good partnerships, although we ran each other out a few times. I think and Michael Bevan, I enjoyed batting with Michael Bevan in the one days because we love taking fielders on and trying to make threes out of twos and twos out of ones. So we always try to put up pressure on the opposition through our running. So they were the guys I enjoyed batting with.
Another question from Anoop. Sachin or Lara, who would you rather not play against?
Preferably both. And they both had a habit of doing well against Australia. I mean, we were, the top side in the world, and the best players always pride themselves on doing well against the best opposition. So Lara was a genius against us, but if he played someone like Bangladesh, he wouldn't score a run. But you knew he was up for the challenge against us, and he loved engaging in a bit of a battle and the banter, and he wanted us to go at him and say things, and then all of a sudden he'd just lock in and he'd score 100. Sachin was just always a great player, and I don't think he ever played badly against us. I can't remember him failing against us too much. They're very hard to split. I mean, two great players, and around that era, there's some amazing players that probably didn't get the recognition, like Jacques Kallis and Kumar Sangakkara. I didn't play a lot against Sangakkara, but Kallis was a fantastic player. But Lara and Tendulkar definitely had the ability to be match winners, and they were regularly consistent at being great players.
And question from Mr. Nayan Patel. Sorry, go ahead.
So I didn't really answer your question, but I'm going to sit on the fence on that one.
All right, that's fine. A question from Mr. Nayan Patel. Do you still eat seafood at Trishna?
Well, I'd love to. Yeah, are they inviting me to? Next time I go there?
You're more than welcome. We'll be happy to host you.
I love the crab's beautiful, yeah, and the calamari, and I like all the seafood there. It's fantastic. Always good.
A quick question from
next time.
We'll be happy to host you. A question from Sharan. In your view, what is the role of the captain in motivating players and building players up to their full potential? A few captains, and could you name a few captains who you think excelled in getting the best out of their players?
Look, I'm not sure it's about motivating your players, because when you're at that level, if you're not motivated, you're not going to make it. So you've got to self-motivate. It's more about making players feel calm and relaxed and confident, and knowing that everything's going to be okay. If things are not going well, just reassure the player that you've been through that situation, you believe in their ability, and they're going to come through it. Sometimes people just need a pat in the back. So I believe a captain's job is to calm players down, make them feel relaxed, and create an environment where people can fulfill their potential without feeling stressed and under pressure. So That's not easy to do sometimes. Occasionally you need to have a harsh word with a player, but to me it was more about encouragement and letting players know that I was backing them and supporting them. And I try to do that either verbally or do it through the media. Yeah, some of the great captains, some of the captains I think I've been impressed. Like MS Dhoni is one I didn't play against, but I think watching him, he was always calm and he just seemed to have the situation under control. Even though I probably knew deep down he didn't have every situation under control, he never gave the appearance that he was flustered or under pressure. He always gave off an air of confidence and it was going to be okay. So that's the sign of a great leader.
Sure. From Kirti Arora, who according to you is the best fielder you played against?
Well, that's a good question. The ones that stand out to me are, Roger Harper from the West Indies was amazing in all positions. That was the best facet. He was a better fieldsman than he was a bowler or a batsman. Jonty Rhodes, incredible. He's worth 2 or 3 players in the field and just had this amazing innate ability to know which way the ball was going. He was a backward point, and that was one of my strong areas. And he saved literally hundreds of runs off my batting. Every time I went to cut the ball, he'd go fine or he'd go square. He just knew where the ball was going. From the Australian side, obviously, my brother Mark was a great fieldsman. And there's a guy that played Shield cricket in Australia, never played Test cricket. I think is the best fielder, or he's as good as anyone. Was a guy called Jamie Siddons, was an incredible fieldsman. And obviously, right now for India, Jadeja is a great fieldsman for India right now, and Steve Smith in a lot of ways. He's a little bit hot and cold, but he has the ability to take these incredible catches that no one else can take.
Right. I guess just wait a couple of more questions. 99 semifinals versus the 2019 final in the World Cup. Which was the better game according to you?
So which game is that? 2019?
The 99 semifinals, which you were involved in, and the last year's World Cup final, which was a tie game.
I think, well, 2 great games. You're right. And I was at the one at Lords as well. It really only came to life the last World Cup final in England, probably in the last 10 overs. So semi-final in 1999, I think was probably people say it was the greatest game of one-day cricket ever. So I'd probably have to go for that. But so far as drama is concerned, the last year's World Cup final was amazing. And New Zealand desperately unlucky to lose that match. It's probably the unluckiest loss of any cricket team I've ever seen.
Yep. Do you want to get more involved in the administration of the game, and is that something that you'd like to do in the future and get involved with the ICC or more with Cricket Australia?
I don't know. I'm not sure. But I was on the MCC World Cricket Committee for 10 years and really enjoyed that role because you had a bit of an influence in what was going on. It's something I'd look at, but I think I'd only be part of a board if I knew I could make real change and genuine change. I wouldn't sit there for the sake of it just because I've got my name and because I've been a captain. I wouldn't just say yes to a board if I knew I couldn't make a change. So that'd be my number one criteria. Am I interested in what they're trying to do, and can we make an actual real difference? If it was yes to both those, then I consider it.
Great. Well, Steve, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you. As Chitra mentioned on the chat, if you want to order your book, you can email her on chitra.kamath@imcnet.org. As I mentioned earlier, it's a must-have for any cricket, not just cricket, but any sports fan. And thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to Ajit now for the vote of thanks.
Thank you.
Selvi, you're on mute.
Okay.
And Mr.
Okay,
Korakiwala.
Yes.
Oh,
Thank
sorry.
you. Thank you for the wonderful session. All things are time bound, and even if we feel that the session should go on, we have to bid farewell. I now call upon Mr. Juzar Korakiwala, Vice President, IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to present the vote of thanks. Over to you, Mr. Korakiwala. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Pranav, for such a lovely interaction we've had about the world of cricket. As we all know, in India, cricket is a religion. And Steve, you've given us a wonderful inside perspective of cricket, not only in India, but worldwide, and your preferences for various cricketers, be it in bowling, batting, fielding. I think you have, Steve, I must say that you're not only done a whole lot of good for cricket, but you've been an all-round good human being, considering the fact that you've been involved in social activities around, and also a good photographer. So thank you, Steve, for such a lovely interaction. And I think our knowledge of cricket is all more richer because of this interaction. Thank you once again, Steve, for coming to IMC and spending some of your precious time with us. And Pranav, thank you very much for getting this whole activity together. And of course, the management of IMC under Ajit, thank you so much. And thank you all participants for being with us this morning. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Have you enjoyed the